Well, hello everybody. Welcome to the Boboleros podcast. This is Margaret, and this podcast is primarily about knitting, but also inspiration from the world of the fine arts and also random drippings from the brain pan that do often occur. So welcome. It's been about 3 weeks or maybe even a little longer than that since the last podcast. So there is so much content to catch up on that I decided to make 3 separate videos. So this video is all about the knit along. If you haven't heard, it's an exciting knit along where myself, Leslie Friend, a friend to knit with, and also Skeincocaine, Gina, we are 3 of us hosting a knit along for the Dartmoor Sweater. It is a pattern by the designer Caidree, and here is a picture of the Dartmoor Sweater. It's a very interesting sweater construction. It's, I would say, probably beginner friendly with some intermediate twists that also challenge the knitter. And it's a great, I imagine this as a great classic sweater to wear over jeans and, just to have it to throw over whatever outfit. I am a big fan of knitting for my fantasy life. Grand sweaters with a lot of color work. And yes, I do get carried away. And I do like fitted sweaters a lot for my fantasy life. But when it comes to my reality, I wind up pulling out of my wardrobe the tried and true sweaters, which are a little bit oversized, which are super cozy, which are usually a neutral color that go with everything. And so for me, that is my turtle dove sweater, which I knit ages ago, over 5 years ago. And it's black, and it is, just goes with everything. And I have to make another because it is almost on its last legs. In fact, I just came back from Paris and I wore that sweater most of the time because it was the perfect layering piece. And what I didn't even realize is that I was walking around with a stitch marker attached to my shoulder. I guess I put it on a few months ago thinking, okay, I have to make sure that I fasten that stitch because it's coming apart. And I never did that. And so instead I was walking around with a hot pink stitch marker the entire time. But in any case, I just want to give you a couple of details about the knit along. It started last week, March 1st, and it runs for 2 months. So you have 2 full months until May 1st. To knit your Dartmoor, and already we have a Ravelry group, and I will put the link below for anybody who wants to join us. We are sharing what yarns we're using, we are sharing our progress, asking questions, and it's just a wonderful little hub of community. And I do think along the course of the knit along, Leslie, Gina, and myself are going to do a couple of lives where all 3 of us will be on together, and I'm figuring out the technology for how to do that, and doing either an Instagram live, a Zoom, or something on YouTube. I'm hoping for more than one because it is so exciting to connect in our community, and it's just the best community of all is the knitting community. So thank you if you've already joined the knit along, and if not, it's not too late. We're only 1 week in. So I would like to just take a few moments to share with you my yarn choices, my progress, and some of the things that I've kind of learned so far. So just to let you know how far I am in it, I have finished the instructions to the part where the left shoulder is placed on stitch markers, and now I'm just about to start the right shoulder. So far it's been going along really smoothly. The pattern is very size inclusive. I am making the smallest size, but I will say that I I did change the gauge a little bit, and that is only because this pattern calls for a size. Let me just give you the gauge. It's 15 stitches to 4 inches and 24 rows using a US size 9. The problem is I couldn't find my size 9 needles. I have a great Chiagu interchangeable set, but when you have a daughter that comes home from college who's also a knitter and needs size 9 needles or whatever sizes, they tend to go missing in the long run. And so that was my predicament. I was ready to cast on, had everything ready to go. Where are my size 9 tips? Nowhere to be found. So I realized I would have to alter things, as we knitters do. We have to be very much able to be quick on our feet and to change the plan when needed. So I changed the plan and decided to use a size 8, and I was able to get gauge. Now, I think that's because of the combination I'm using of yarn. So let me just say that I am using the Wensley yarn. This is a yarn that Gina and Leslie and I, during Cake Palooza, we got this at the stand where Forever Yarn was. And speaking of Forever Yarn, I am so excited because on Friday, March the 15th, Friday, March 15th, I will be at Forever Yarn and just doing a little celebration with Yen, celebrating the fact that it's the yarn crawl. We're going to be doing a little, Instagrams live, podcasting, and also a Boboleros trunk show. So I'll be bringing some goodies from my latest collection, which is called Afternoon at the Louvre, inspired by the art I saw at the museum in Paris. And I will be filming a separate video for that. But in any case, I'd love to see you if you are in the area. Forever Yarn is one of the most beautiful yarn stores imaginable. Yen has such an amazing eye for putting together a curated yarn collection. She carries La Bien-Aimée in huge amounts of colors and bases, as well as so many of our beloved hand dyers. And it's a stunningly inspirational store. It is fresh. It is, I could never leave there without bringing home a bunch of new yarn for projects that I never knew I needed to cast on. But Yen has a way of, I call her the yarn alchemist, because she has a way of combining different yarns to make incredible fresh textures. So if you go to her store and you see some of the samples she's knit, it's so refreshing, it's so hip, and it's so on point and cozy, comfortable, fashionable. It hits all the points, very artistically done. And I also had the pleasure of interviewing Yen. One of my first interviews when I started this channel was to go over to Doylestown and to interview Yen. So I'll also link that video. If you haven't seen it, it is such a wonderful conversation that we had. So in any case, it was at the Forever Yarn booth that I got this beautiful yarn, which is the Wensley worsted by La Bien-Aimée. And to let you know the content, it's 50% Falkland Corriedale, 25% Falkland Merino, and 25% Wensleydale. My eyesight, I'm so sorry. Wensleydale, I think it's called. So it's really unique. And this colorway is so gorgeous. It is called Emerge, and it's a very deep blue. I'm not usually knitting with blues, but this really somehow caught my eye, and I loved the moodiness of this. So on its own, I found that I was not able to get gauge, and that also was, I didn't have the right needle. So I did have a couple of skeins of my own hand dyed. I have none that are in skeins, just I balled it up. But this is my own hand dyed. This is a base that I use regularly for so many of the bubble wraps. It is in so many of my patterns as well. And this is the Vivian brushed mohair. What I love about this is that it is a very juicy and rich and thick kind of mohair. And it provides a lot of luft, and it's cozy and soft. And I was very intrigued at what kind of fabric would come about if I was to hold these two together. So I decided to go right ahead and plunge in and make a gauge swatch. And this is what emerged from the gauge swatch. So interesting, right? Like you could see there's a lot of play with the colors. Sometimes it's more bluish, sometimes you get the black, and yeah, it really does move. I like this idea of colors being, and fabric of yarn being shapeshifters. So depending on the light, the way the light is hitting, you'll get more black or you'll get more blue. So it's fascinating when I've noticed I really like combining two different yarns, like a mohair with another, and oftentimes I'll combine not quite a match. Like in this case, these two colors are not quite a match. They're close cousins, I would say. Close cousins, but enough of a difference to kind of make that spark, make that magic. So once I did my gauge swatch, this was on a size 8 needle. I was able to get the 15 stitches to the 4 inches. I was pretty much ready to go. So I don't know, I was really loving this detail of the icord, and it's right here in the pattern. You see this really cool icord down there, right? And it runs, it's a drop shoulder sweater. Sorry, this is like opposite. Drop shoulder sweater, and so it like runs through the back and the neckline and all this stuff, and just down here. So it runs pretty much the full width of the sweater, except it stops around here. And I was thinking of using a contrast color for that. Speaking of Doylestown, once I was there and I saw that Yen did a sweater, and she just made one detail in a contrast. It was very similar kind of idea of just the icord in a contrast color, like, and it worked so well. It's sort of like another thing I saw recently. I think it was in a fashion magazine, a pencil skirt, which was like a dark gray. And then there was a zipper, and the zipper with the zipper lining, it was in a contrast. And I forgot what that contrast was. It was like a hot pink. And it was so interesting, that unexpected little twist on a classic. And I thought, okay, I really want to cast on the icord in a different color. And that is what I did. So I decided to stash dive a bit, and I got something in my stash from Madeline Tosh, and I'll show you right now. It's called Neon Peach. This is one of my favorite colors. I've had it for years in my stash, and I've always wanted to work with it and use it in, I don't know, like as a color pop, because it's such a fascinating color. Between the orange corals and the pinks, it's, I don't know, it just really sings. So I found also a tiny bit, I think from leftovers from some project I must have done at some point. I found a little bit of mohair, and I decided to go for it. I might have, because this is a DK weight, I think I held this double. So I worked from the inside of the ball and the outside to create a double-stranded thing and one strand of the mohair. And that is what created my icord. Now, if you've already started and are worried about the icord, you know, maybe that's a new technique to you. I wouldn't worry about it. I would just go for it. The pattern is very straightforward. And the only part I was confused about, and actually because I don't make I-cords very often, I did look up a couple of refresher videos on it, and Pearl Soho has so many good ones. So the only thing I had a question about in the pattern so far was when she said to pick up the stitches for the sleeve. I was kind of worried because I didn't want the I-cord. See, like here, you notice that the I-cord has almost like two rails of stitches going on, this one and this one. And I wasn't sure, I didn't want it to look wonky, like in that in-between place. I didn't want the blue to show. I just wanted it to be a straight line of beautiful, even knits, those V's. That's really what I wanted, was like a straight, almost like a railroad of V's. And so I was worried in picking up that I would maybe pick up on the wrong. I'm like not a great picker-upper. Like in sewing as well, I never keep the line. And so I was afraid I would not keep the line. But in her video, she shows you, and that's in the Caidree's video that comes with the pattern. And actually, it was not hard at all. It was pretty straightforward. So you can see here in this kind of intersection that where here I have the edge already picked up. It's very neat. But when you go here, this is the next section, right? So you see there's this separation where you have one row of the orange and then the blue and then another row of orange. So I picked up on the blue and that concealed that second row of orange. And so I was able to create it to be super straight. And I'm really excited about it. I'm super excited. And I'm already on the other shoulder area. So I feel like, you know, this took me a couple nights of knitting, and I think I'm okay with sizing. I might be actually way bigger than what the smallest calls for. I did my measuring and I feel like this is already quite a bit more oversized. However, I am embracing it, especially since I found a YouTube podcast channel that I wasn't like aware of. I don't know how I found them. I'm so glad I did. They are the cutest girls. They're called Those Twins Who Knit. Oh my gosh, they are so adorable. And they knit the most incredible things. You have to check them out. Those Twins Who Knit. They're beautiful. They are inspiring. And my gosh, do they knit epic sweaters with all sorts of cabling. And one thing that they talk about a lot is their love of oversized. And so I thought to myself, I really don't have too many oversized sweaters, and I should, because they are super comfortable. And the girls wear their oversized sweaters tucked into their high-waisted pants, and I thought that is such a cute look. I do love that. I do have one sweater that I do that with, and it's the it's Koiva or Kaluva, it's called. It's a pattern by Goodnight Day. It's on my Ravelry page, and I made it out of Loopy Mango Mohair So Soft, and it's got pink stripes. I've worn this really often, and it's really very billowy, and I like tucking it into pants. So it really is a nice, comfortable thing to do. So anyway, they are really inspiring. So when I noticed that this is going to be quite oversized, I actually was overjoyed. I said, yes, I'm gonna have my oversized sweater. So far the only modification I've made to the pattern is this contrasting color for the I-cord. I've been posting about this on my Instagram, and some people have said, yeah, I've been thinking of doing the same thing, or I've already done like a contract. So it's kind of cool. I think it's in the collective subconscious, like to do, if you wish, a contrast for that little detail. And anyway, I'm really happy with this color story going on here. And yeah, and I'm really happy with how this fabric is so far turning out. It's super soft, it's super light, which I love. It kind of looks like a hairy, almost like a mink type downy goodness that's fallen on top, and I really love that. So onwards to the knitting. I brought this on my trip to Paris. I did a quick 4-day trip just last week, and I had so many knitting plans. I had so many knitting plans for this sweater. I brought everything I needed, and I even brought backup. So one of the things I'm always nervous about is that my needles are going to be taken during the TSA pre-check. And you know, I'm using these Chiagus, right? So this is not a dull point. And I also had my little snips for cutting the yarn. So between both of those things on my carry-on, I thought I might get caught and I might actually not be able to pass security. So I looked all over the place and I found another pair of size 8s that were bamboo or something. And I brought them as backup in case these got confiscated. And luckily I was able to make it through the security, no problem, with my knitting needles and even the snips. So I was like, wow, this was pretty easy. And I knit a little bit on the plane, and then after that I didn't even take it out once on the trip. Not once. Disappointing a little bit, because I had all sorts of, again, fantasies of finding a really quaint cafe, sipping on a cappuccino and knitting away while looking at the Seine River, and yet that never happened. So in any case, but I'm really excited to have this on my needles, to enjoy it a bit longer, and most of all, to have it with this community of knitters. So that's what I've got so far. I'd love to hear if you've joined the KAL, and if so, what colors are you using? What yarn are you using for the project? What have you already, you know, how much have you knit, and what have been your thoughts about the pattern so far? I find it to be very easy to navigate this pattern, and everything is so super straightforward. And I like the construction. It's not usually the type that I'm used to, so I enjoy the challenge of it. And yeah, and again, if you haven't joined and are interested in knitting, this is our sweater that we're knitting for the Knit-a-long, the Dartmoor Sweater. The hashtag for Instagram to post your progress, post your yarn, post any questions is Dart-a-long KAL. Okay, so that's the Dart-a-long KAL. And yeah, if you want to tag any one of us, Skeincocaine, Leslie Friend, myself, Boboleros, please do so. I would love to see your progress and your choices. And again, stay tuned, because we are going to be having some fun prizes. We're going to have some fun lives going on, and I really want to have a chance to interact with all you guys, just because it's just so much fun to knit that way in community. So that's about it. The Ravelry group is already formed. The link is below. And yes, and if you can make it on Friday, March 15th, I will be at the yarn store, which is Forever Yarn, beautiful yarn store in Doylestown, Pennsylvania, and bringing some selections from Boboleros, including the new Louvre collection, inspired by my trip to Paris. And I hope to see you there. I'll be there at 11, And yes, it would be so nice to meet you. So, okay, so that's it for now. Stay tuned because I will have 2 more videos that I will be sharing. One is going to be about my new collection. I can't decide if it's called the Louvre collection or is it Afternoon at the Louvre. I want to call it Afternoon at the Louvre. But anyway, I think that's what I'm going to go with. So there'll be another video just about the collection and then another video just about random drippings from my Paris trip, including the haul, shoes, handbags, perfume, chocolate, tea, and random, of course, restaurants. The restaurants that we went to, I was with my husband, and just, you know, in case you're going, this is like, I accompany my husband on these trips when he goes in the spring. So I have a couple of suggestions for restaurants in case you're going, and you know, there's so much to choose from there, it could be overwhelming. And so I'll just share some of the ones that we found to be really delightful and some of the boutiques and shopping and goodies. Okay, so I will catch you soon. Bye.